over to you.
Cool. Yeah, thank you, David. And yeah, thank you all for your time. Yeah, AI is obviously a big topic. So I'd start putting together what I hope is an educational presentation slide deck to run through. So, but as David said, any point while I'm talking, it should last about sort of 30 minutes, but just put your hand up and there should be plenty of time for questions at the end. So I shall get us starting if I can remember how to use Teams screen share. So give me one moment. I'll tell you what, let me move it onto my other screen here. Right, can you all see that okay?
Yeah, and that terrifies me. Starting MS-DOS like that takes me back. God, that's horrendous. That is terrifying. I've got a shiver.
Well, that is my first question. So how many of us remember DOS?
Yep.
So hands, can we all? Most people? Yeah, so I think the reason our generation's a bit more patient than the younger generations is because of DOS. So those who don't remember DOS, it was the way we had to interface with computers before we had Windows and a point and click. It was slow. You basically had to code. You had to know commands and codes to be able to get it to operate. So my early memories of DOS is when I was a kid. My dad was an IBM account manager, so we always had PCs around the house when I was a kid. Everyone else in the neighborhood, when I was about 10, 11, was getting Nintendos. I wasn't allowed a Nintendo because my dad said we already had computer games at home, which those games entailed literally typing open door, move left, move right. So needless to say, my house wasn't the go-to gaming house of the neighborhood. But the point being, it was slow. So I wanted to kind of start with a little bit of a thought experiment, which is if we all had to go back to our offices and work after this call, and we had to use DOS to do everything. So our members had to use DOS, our staff had to use DOS. Members hitting a website, they're met with this sort of screen to look at. Like, just imagine how much slower life would be, how much more frustration your members would have. So I don't want to kind of make that thought experiment quite concrete. We'll come back to DOS in a moment. So yeah, quick background on myself. So the founder of Move Technologies. Move Technologies is a venture builder. So what that means is we build companies, and we specifically build companies, fitness technology companies. So combining technology and our industry's needs. So our model is to look at emerging technologies sort of 3 to 4 years out. So things that we think are going to hit the market in 3 or 4 years' time. And then we recruit or engineers or researchers in those fields. And we literally just play with the technology around our industry's challenges and our mission of how do you keep people active. So we've got a number of different technologies in the group. We've got some interesting and newer ones, active reality, which is it uses VR, free roam VR. So we convert squash courts or studios into physically active esports, really popular with the hard to reach sort of teenage demographic. It's kind of, if you can't beat computer games, join them. So combine them together. Longevity is a very new business, and that's commercializing the science. There's lots of cutting edge science on longevity. We're commercializing that and finding a package of how to allow operators access to all this cutting edge technology. And then what the talk's mainly about today is Higher Bob AI, which is a company that we formed over 3 years ago, working in AI technology. So what's all the hype about is the key. There's a lot of hype, there's a lot of noise, and hopefully by the end of this presentation, we kind of cut through some of that noise. So first thing is, what is AI? So AI has been around for, the actual conception of AI has been around for about 18th century. It's actually been used practically for the last 50 years. It's mainly around this area of machine learning. And machine learning is essentially getting a computer to figure out how to fulfill its task by giving it a lot of information, a lot of data, and it's normally a very specific task. So we'll all use machine learning daily or weekly when we log on to Netflix and it recommends what you want to watch, or you go onto Amazon Marketplace and it recommends a product it thinks you like. So machine learning, as I say, has been around for a long time. In fact, TRP, which Justin and Tam were both involved in helping me build TRP 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, we employed a PhD from Bath University in machine learning to develop an algorithm which predicted how likely gym members were to cancel before they did. So machine learning has been around for a long time, and that is AI. It's getting the terminology of AI more, but it's not what all the hype's about. All the hype's about this very niche area of AI, which is when you combine deep learning with natural language processing. And what that's created is what they call Gen AI, generative AI, and large language models. And what it means, it works in a similar way. It's very similar to like predictive text on your phone, where it's just trying to guess the next word in a sentence. But by giving it huge amounts of data, and as computing power has increased over the last, whatever, sort of 20 odd years, it's got better and better and better at predicting that next word in the sentence. And by using huge amounts of data, it's learned and it's taught itself how to understand the context of the sentence and understand language itself. And that's how it's got so good at being able to predict it. So the major takeaway is that computers now understand language. So what does that mean? Well, ultimately, it means that very soon intelligence is going to be a commodity. So if you imagine, computers have all the information of pretty much the entirety of humanity stored, and any new information stored. So that all gets put into like a collective brain, if you like, collective cloud, and any bits of information you can find out, and you can literally talk to a computer to find out. So we're going to be able to access the most leading cutting edge lawyer or accountant or cancer research, where you can provide information of your own personal data, and you've got access to the cutting edge cancer research knowledge, and you can just communicate and talk to it. So intelligence is going to be nearly free, if not free, like a commodity, like turning on the tap. Anyone in the world can communicate with the most leading expert in any field. So to bring that down to earth a little bit, we need to think, what impact will that have? We need to go back to when language itself was invented. So language was invented about 100,000 years ago. The leading theory is it's invented to help us share information, to share knowledge. And so once language was invented, you start to see humans actually invent things. So we started to control fire. We started to understand how to create tools, and we started to hunt and gather. But it was about 60 odd thousand years later, so quite a slow progress of invention rate, before another milestone was hit, which was the invention of cave paintings. And cave paintings, if you think about it, it removes some friction in sharing knowledge. Instead of having to be at the same place at the same time, you could put some information, some knowledge down, and that could be shared across time. So that sped up a little bit of the innovation rate. So we started inventing the wheel. We got farming invented. We got a lot more tools. And then again, another sort of relatively slow pace, but it was 35,000 years later, we get the written word. And if you think about what that's doing, it's making it even easier to share knowledge. So things start picking up quite a lot then. We get science, we get compass, we get exploration. And only 4,000 years later now, we get the printing press. And the printing press was a huge catalyst in innovation. We invented the car, we invented trains, we invented science, we invented medicine. One story that really struck me when I was looking into this over that period, it's about the 1700s. Smallpox was raging across the world, killing thousands and thousands of people, about 15% of any population. And a bit of an unlikely pairing of a enslaved man called Omnibus and a minister called Mr. Cotton in Boston in about 1721, when smallpox arrived in Boston. Omnibus said he'd actually had smallpox and he's immune to it. So Mr. Cotton didn't really believe this, but did a bit of due diligence, found out that's true. And the process that he'd said his tribe had done was they'd make a small cut in the wound, take the pus of an infected person and rub it in. So really early form of vaccination. So these two men go about trying to save people's lives and trying to spread this method around Boston, but it was in times, heavy racism. They were attacked. Their house was firebombed. But luckily, the printing press had become a commodity at that time, as in it was nearly accessible to pretty much every average man. So they started using the printing press to spread the word. And long story short, they managed to save hundreds of lives in Boston, and more importantly, spread even further. And it was the start of the vaccination program in smallpox. And smallpox to this day is still the only disease we've eradicated from the earth. So I say printing press was a huge one. It really sped up the sharing of knowledge. 500 years now, we get to the computer. The computer, as we know, unlocked huge amounts of progress and inventions. We get space travel, we get satellites, we get mobile phones. 50 years now, we get the internet. The internet was almost like the ultimate that we've seen, that in our memories we'll see, of how you share information. And we've all lived through the last 20 years of innovations, which has been quite incredible. Interesting side point is I was using AI to create these images by asking it to give me an image of all the inventions over each period. Every other image it was doing was quite calm. The last 20 years is this insane kind of psychedelic number of inventions. So what does that look like when you plot it on a chart? It looks a bit like this. So we get language 100,000 years ago. And that improves the sharing of knowledge, but only to a small degree. So you get a slow gradient of number of inventions. And then from the written word in the printing press, it starts going super steep. And this curve here is not to be thought of as the same rate. If you zoom into that line, it's an exponentially growing rate. So the better we are at sharing knowledge, the more and more innovations happen. So what does it mean? It ultimately means the next, 5-10 years are going to see an absolutely dramatic rate of innovation and change in our world. So if I like to think of it as if the percentage of collective human thoughts, the percentage which are new, as in innovative, is higher, the more invention you have. And so if we're all able to combine our shared knowledge, then you have a much higher percentage of new thoughts, because no one's reinventing the wheel. You've got a much higher percentage of new thoughts. And each technology catalyst we've just seen produces a much, much higher percentage of new thoughts. And now we've almost got the potential of a 90% of new thoughts, because we've got access to just talking to a computer to find out anything we want to find. Anyone in the world can do that. So bringing it back down to earth a little bit, we can't, like, people often ask me, what's the world going to look like in like 5 or 10 years time, or what sort of inventions are going to come? And literally, because of the rate of change, it's like asking a caveman to predict the invention of the car. It's almost impossible to do. But what we probably can do is predict the next 1 to 2 years a little bit better. So here's our friend DOS again. Like we say, DOS was a slow method of interfacing with a computer. We got the graphical user interface, which was a point and click, much more intuitive. That opened up the world of computers to everybody, which is the world we live in now. And that was a very sea change difference in speed at which you can interface with a computer, going from DOS to a graphical user interface. We're now entering an era of a completely new interface with computers, which is just voice. It's just natural language, humanoid interface. So going back to our thought experiment, as if we're not thinking about adopting this type of technology, then in the near future, 1 to 2 years, maybe even less than, consumers are going to get so used to interacting with businesses and services with just natural voice. If they hit your business or website and they're still having to point and click, it's like serving them up DOS now. And you know what we're all like, we're wowed by a new technology for the first 2 weeks. But then once we're used to it, we get so frustrated if an online shopping store isn't as easy as Amazon one-click buy. So I just want to keep thinking back to that technology. It will move fast, and we need to be thinking of at least testing the waters of it soon. So still sticking on the theme of what we're going to see in the next 2 to 3 years. I hope this will work. This is a video, so let's see if it will play on Teams. Okay.
Hey, figure one, what do you see right now?
see a red apple on a plate in the center of the table, a drying rack with cups and a plate, and you standing nearby with your hand on the table.
Great. Can I have something to eat?
Sure thing.
Great. Can you explain why you did what you just did while you pick up this trash?
On it. So I gave you the apple because it's the only edible item I could provide you with from the table.
Great. So based on the scene right now, where do you think the dishes in front of you go next?
The dishes on the table, like that plate and cup, are likely to go into the drying rack next.
Great. Can you put them there?
Of course.
All right. So how do you think you did?
I think I did pretty well. The apple found its new owner, the trash is gone, and the tableware is right where it belongs.
I agree. Thanks, figure one.
You're welcome. If there's anything else you need help with, just let me know.
So that humanoid technology is combining humanoid robotics with large language model processing and vision processing. So how that tech actually works, it's a lot of the time, I think people think AI is like an old chatbot. You know, you get those frustrating chatbots on a website, and that's software, that's logic-based software, those old chatbots, which are very frustrating to use. AI actually thinks for itself and interprets itself. So how that technology is actually working, it's got a vision AI that will essentially interpret a image. It translates that into language, and it uses a language model AI to interpret each part of that interaction. So the other interesting thing about that tech is that's from a company called Figure. It's a brand new startup, and they've done all that in less than 20 months. So that's literally from nothing to creating the entire robot and its AI within its head. And they're not the only ones doing it. We've got the slide will move on. Hang on one sec. We've got Tesla's also bringing out their robot. They've also done this in 18 months. So this is Tesla's new Optimus robot. So in the next couple of years, we're going to start seeing these around, as scary as they look. They'll probably start off in factories and so on, but this technology is coming. It's coming pretty fast. They reckon they're going to sell 1 billion. Each company thinks it's going to sell 1 billion of these units. So there'll be a faster adoption than the mobile phone. So that's in the next sort of 1 to 2 years. But what can we actually get right now today? Well, right now today, you get digital versions of those. So digital AI employees. So I want to spend a little bit of time just talking about how those work practically. So I assume, in fact, let's do a very quick poll of the hands. Is how many people have actually played with ChatGPT, the app or the website? Yeah, okay, so most people. So that is ChatGPT is using a very powerful language model that they keep updating. They actually released a new one this week. But the actual agent, the interface itself, isn't that smart. It's just literally taking your request and replying with the most plausible answer it thinks. It's not thinking for itself. It doesn't have a goal. It's more a little bit like a search engine, if you like. How AI employees work is you use 2 technologies. One's called AI thought chaining and one's called RAG. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. And essentially what you're doing is you're using the language model to force the AI to think before it replies. So it can understand it's got a goal, and it can understand like a thought process. So if you think about some of the smartest people you may know, like in our world, it's often the engineers. they're often the most thoughtful people. They don't sort of blurt out like I often do an answer. They'll go through a quiet moment and then reply. And essentially, that's what you're using the language model to do when you're creating AI employees. So let's go through a bit of a practical example for our industry. So let's say you've got a sales AI employee and it receives an inquiry saying how much is membership. This could be on a live chat, an SMS, a WhatsApp, an email. First of all, you get the AI to comprehend it. So you're just using the language model. It's not replying yet. You're saying to the language model, do you understand what the customer is asking? Once you've got it to understand what it's asking, you then, depending on its job, and in this case, it's sales, so you then get it to reflect. So you say, what stage of the sales cycle do you think this customer's at? So it's acting like a very, very good human salesperson, but with the big advantage that it can go into the knowledge base of the entirety of humanity to pull out its answer. So it can have the cutting edge knowledge of the very latest sales training and coaching. And so it can really assess, like in this example, it's quite simple. It's only got the one, how much is membership? So it will probably diagnose, they're early on in the sales cycle, they're at needs analysis or whatever it might be. You can then keep on going through a thought process and you program this in to force it to do that. And it can reflect and reference things. So it can reference your membership base, it can reference its training, it can reference its goal. All this is happening in milliseconds. So by the time it gets to generate the answer, it replies with something like, what's your motivation for joining? Again, just like a very good human salesperson would do, it's actually ignoring the member's question because it's actually wanting to get to the value proposition. It's wanting to get to the motive reasons of why they're joining. So this is an actual real life example chat. It's a membership cancellation agent used by Abercroft. So in this case, it's taking the customer's cancellation inquiry. They fill in a form online to select the reason why they want to cancel. So interesting thing here is part of its training in the thought process. We train the agent to find out if they're going to join another club or where they're planning to. So it will always ask that question or some similar question if it hasn't got it already. And that's just part of its thought process. The other benefit you can have there is you have an insight AI agent. So you can ask your AI agent insights like, what percentage of our cancellations join another club? And it will just answer you like an expert human. It just knows, it will remember all conversations it's had, and it will just pull you, and it can produce pie chart and all sorts of things. So the customer replies to that question. So another interesting thing here is part of its thought process is to always reflect on, has it learnt any new information during its questioning? And in this case, it has. It's learnt that they're an NHS nurse. She's just said it in passing, but that's what it's learnt. Now, it's got access to all the various membership prices and discounts and offers. So its reply is super interesting. So ultimately, it was able to identify and pick up that an NHS discount was applicable. The customer didn't know that was possible, and end result is it saved the member. So in this particular AI agent is currently performing 4 times better than the human agent they had working on it before. And I think mainly one of the interesting things about the tech is it's the speed of response, which is really given the uplift in both sales and service. You get a huge uplift just by the fact they can reply instantly as soon as the customers come in with an intelligent and thoughtful response. So this is just I want to put in literally just this morning. I don't know if anyone's seen this yet, but OpenAI's released language model release, and it's incorporated emotional intelligence and voice. So this is their demo they released yesterday. Hang on, try that again. We'll skip that. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to that later. So it's yeah, it'll blow your mind. It's a very it essentially has emotional intelligence. It can change its tone and interpret people's reactions to it. So I'll share the link afterwards if you haven't already seen it. So what does it mean for our industry? We're right on the edge now of this sort of technical revolution. What does it mean for us in this sector? And I think often we've got a bad rep as an industry for being slow to adopt technology. And I often ponder, obviously being in the tech field, why that is. And sometimes I think we see technology a little bit as the opposite of our products as fitness and health, almost like a foe. And for me, I kind of want to flip that on its head, because if you look at digital technology adoption over the last, say, 50 years, what's it done? It's increased the amount of free time we've had. It's increased flexibility. It's reduced manual labor. And that means that people have more time and more energy to want to do physical activity in their leisure time. So a bit of evidence to kind of support that is if you look at the iPhone introduction in 2007, and the membership penetration rate we had in the UK is about 4 million members. By now, we've got 11 million members. So often these technologies get blamed for, and big tech and social media get blamed for, hacking the brain or influencing elections and so on. So what does that really mean? It means that they get blamed, or they can have mass behavioural change impact. So micro education, if you like, of the reels and social media can change behaviour at a mass level. And a way to support that for the positive, if that content's positive, then it can have a dramatic positive effect. So this is a Les Mills stat, which is 30% of Generation Z are members of our facility. That's double the percentage we've achieved in any other generation. And why is that? It's not particularly, I would argue, something we've done as a sector. It's not, policy intervention. It's mainly big tech. It's mainly the fact that for all the negatives that social media has and the addiction, the reels and so on, when it's positive content, it can really influence positive behavior change. One project that we're working on, I can see John's joined the call, with John Oxley at Stockport, is can you use this technology to actually go further into the marketplace? Can you start interacting with people who are inactive? And can you start using this power of this very knowledgeable behavior change AI to interact with the population and nudge them to go out for a walk, find a local running track, find a local yoga studio, not necessarily come to the facility, it's not convenient, but try and edge them into activity. So what does AI mean for our industry? My guess is it's going to help us grow, is the main point. I think the technology itself and the adoption of it will free up more free time, more flexibility. But I also think we've got a yin and a yang responsibility. I think our product, if you like, is too important not to be adopted as the technology revolution comes on. If you think about well, ultimately we're just living in chimpanzee bodies, if you like. We've got millions of years of evolution, and the biological evolution doesn't adopt as quickly as our tool evolution does, and our digital evolution. So what does our chimp body understand? Our chimp body only really understands 3 inputs, which is breath, heart rate, and hormone release. And you need to get those levers pulled in the right balance. Otherwise, you end up with obesity and mental health conditions. And what does our industry provide? It provides the levers for those inputs. So I think it's not just that that's the technology will help us adopt and grow. And I don't think our job is to just make our services accessible. I think, you know, as leaders, and all of us are leaders on this call, is we want to be pioneers and not followers. We want to help, we want to build and not just supply. We want to influence and not just sell. We want to make the product more accessible to people, not just accessible. We want to proactively try and integrate it into everybody's lives. I'm excited to take any questions.
Excellent. Al, thank you. That was really, really useful. And I have to say, going back to the MS-DOS, the one thing I would say is Scuba on DOS was the best leisure management system I ever operated on. It was just brilliant. It did exactly what I needed it to do. So there's not all bad memories of MS-DOS. Has anybody got any questions? Anybody like to put a challenge to Al or talk about what they're currently doing and if there's a different opportunity? Not seeing any hands, but Al, could you just stop sharing the screen so I can see people a little better, please? Thank you. John Oxley.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's brilliantly helpful, Al, and just from our point of view, I mean, we've been exploring a few things around AI, and I think it's just one of those things that you've got to sort of embrace, immerse yourself in it a little bit and see what applications there might be, and probably be a little bit brave as well. I mean, we're picking up on Al's point about rather than just looking at its application in terms of the traditional obvious things that you do, that Al's, you know, whether it be sales, put an agent on you there, or as Warren has done in terms of cancellations, there are other activities that we could introduce it to, but we're looking at our responsibility being to sort of 300,000 people in Stockport rather than just the 30,000 that walk through the doors of the centres, and saying, okay, well, have we got something that enables us to more easily reach out and connect, and then begin to engage, build relationships and what have you, in order to get them moving wherever that might be, to start with. And actually, you don't necessarily need to be active with us. You know, we're quite comfortable about being selfless with it. But I think, you know, that's one of the things that we're starting to explore, and also its ability to triage. We think there's an opportunity. We've been talking with our NHS partners and looking at pathways into health intervention programs, and whether we can use AI as to supplement a sort of triage service where we can get inquiries in and make sure that residents receive the right intervention that's appropriate for them in a non-judgmental way, and which would be therefore a more effective and more efficient way of getting them moving and getting the right service to them. So that's just something else that we've been thinking about as we sort of start on this journey of exploration, really. So I hope that's helpful for people.
Brilliant. Thanks, John. Andy. Andy, you're on mute.
Thank you. Second one today. Just the general, have you found people go straight in, or do you feel the best approach is to like supplement your already existing operation, like in customer service or, you know, GP referrals, that sort of thing, or are people going all out?
Yeah, no, we recommend just the best way to think of this technology is, well, really not as a technology. It's closer to a human resource than it is to a tech resource. So it shouldn't be seen as some big tech project that, and often what we find, if we end up getting into, you know, some tech director territory, then they're just so intrigued by it that they want to mess around with it. But it actually doesn't need to touch. You know, it can interact with your member management system just like a human employee does with a login, and it can update its notes and etc. So it doesn't need to have a complex tech project around it. So yeah, we always recommend just think of what is a key user case. There's many different user cases, like you know, cancellation, service, retention, sales, etc. And then just deploy it on one of those. Sales is often the one you end up with a quicker ROI figure from, because you can literally just calculate that very quickly. Cancellations equally, you can calculate quite quickly. So put it on a user case that's going to get a good ROI to it and save on efficiency, if you like. And then you get used to the technology, and you'll see each AI agent is assigned a human manager. So and it has if you allow it to, has a text message and the email of its human manager, and it's trained. If it doesn't know the answer to a question, it will say to the customer, I'll just check that with my manager, and it just sends them a text message or an email saying, I'm stuck on this question. When they answer it, it then updates its knowledge record, and it will never be asked that question again because it knows the answer to it. So you end up with we call it on-the-job training. So instead of trying to think of, I've got to get this all trained up in everything we know, you train it just like you would a new employee, where you give it, it'll read your website, it'll read all your basic information, and then the first few days it'll be asking 2 or 3 questions a day. Then after a couple of weeks, you'll just get maybe 1 or 2 a month.
I think on that point, Al, sorry, David, that really breaks down so many of the barriers around this. So Justin and I did a 15-minute live stream around, you know, Bob, and you know, what Justin said around it's like just training up a team member, but it's your digital team member. It was almost like that light bulb moment of it doesn't have to be this huge task. It is, like you say, it's that learning on the job, which makes it so accessible. Yeah, it's a very it's so, and even for ourselves, when we, you know, 3 years ago when we started playing with this, it was only really, I don't know, 18 months ago when that light bulb moment happened for us. And so the one of the side effects I think we're going to see is that we're not the graphical user interface and screen time. We're all sat there on our laptops. I think over the next few years that will go down and down and down and down, because you don't need to do that anymore. You can literally just talk to and ask your phone, looks like a humanoid agent, to different questions. So yeah, it's much similar to a human than it is to a bit of software. Yeah, and of course it allows the humans to make those meaningful connections and have the relationships out on the floor, which is where you want them, rather than, like you say, behind a screen. I'll be quiet.
Thank you. I think that's a really interesting point you mentioned about actually it's a human resource. And we all know the more effort and more time you put into that human resource, whether it be an induction, whether it be learning and development, whether it be personal growth, the better it gets. And I think that's a really interesting way of looking at this, because I think one of the things it will also do on this is make us all look back to our websites, for example, and make sure the content we've got on our website's up to date, because that's where it's going to go for information. Now, if we've still got a creche on there that we closed 20 years ago or whatever, it's going to make us tidy up what we present, which I think is really powerful. Andy, is that a latent hand, or did you want to follow up on your question? Okay, Andy, you go, and then it's Darren. Andy, you're on mute again, mate.
I guess against our traditional service model, which is probably more 9 till 5 or 9 till 8 in the evening, whatever, gives us the benefit of 24/7, and it's a lot quicker in terms of that response rate. And I can see why the benefit is the recovery potential there, because you have got that 24/7 capability with this. Is that what you have feedback on?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Justin might be able to answer this, but I'm pretty sure that example we used happened in the evening. That nurse, I think that cancellation thing happened like 11 o'clock at night or something. So yeah, you see that all the time in the logs, that the customer's doing something late at night, and the AI is dealing with them instantly. And then you end up seeing in the logs, even though it's on email, a lot of the agents are on email, you end up seeing a chat log like you would see on a WhatsApp, because it goes back and forth so quickly. You've kept them engaged, and you've got this really great, and the number of ending emails from the member or the customer are so grateful and thankful for the speed of service that they're getting. So it allows us to really level up the speed of our services and frees up our our staff time for in real life. The whole purpose of Move Technologies Group is increase activity in real life connections, because in real life connections activity are what our chimpanzees bodies need to stay healthy. And so the whole purpose of all the tech that we're building is how can we free that time up for our team to be spending actually in person with our customers.
Thanks.
Okay. Roland's managed to use his voice agent to get his hand to be put up in Teams as he drives his car to his meeting. Roland.
Yeah, I was just going to ask. So it all sounds very fantastic. I think from my perspective, I'm sitting here thinking, with a lot of the pressure on, I'm sure most of us here have pressures on budgets and stuff. How affordable will a tech like this be for our sector?
Yeah, it's pretty simple pricing we do. We charge £3,000 setup and £3,000 a month per agent. One agent can deal with an unlimited number of inquiries. You do have usage costs, which is a small cost if you start dealing with tens of thousands of inquiries a month. And an agent is defined by a goal and a knowledge base. So like one agent could deal with sales, one agent could deal with cancellation, one agent could do with like service or swim coaching, etc. So yeah, it's relatively simple pricing, and we're very focused on proving the ROI and the value with your first deployment, because you can get carried away with this tech of all the various things it could do. So make sure you've got a very clear sort of business case argument, which we often help clients with. Deploy that, and then once you've done that, it's just open the doors to, and once you've got used to the tech, to be honest, as well, and how humans, your current human resource, manages and works with your digital resource, then you start thinking of different places you can place it.
Thanks, Al. Andy.
Thank you.
I'm trying not to be on mute again. The thing for us, and my colleagues on here as well, so we keep texting each other different things. Security, that's always massive in sort of public service now, cyber security. What are the red flags? Is there any? What have you been through, etc.?
Yeah, so again, it's thinking of the analogy of a human. So it's providing it with access to the information it needs to serve the customer. If the same process you'd use for a human, if you want to look up a customer record, and you need to do that in your current policies, is to get name, date of birth, and whatever it might be, a PIN code, it might just be those two factors, then your AI agent's trained in the same way. So the security processes are just very similar to security processes around a new member of staff.
Okay. Thanks, Andy. Al, John's asked a question in the chat. Says, why can't the same agent be trained to handle more stuff?
That's mainly because the way the tech works is going back to the beginning of the presentation. Really, it's all to do with probabilities. So it's all based on whereas software is logic based and deterministic, this technology is non-deterministic and probability based. So to get an agent performing really well, again, it's not dissimilar to a human. If you try and train someone up to know everything about your business, they'll be a great generalist, but they might not be the very best salesperson. So you can often service agents that sit on your website, have a good holistic knowledge of everything, and they'll do a good job of everything. But if you want them to be focused just on sales, on your sales pages, you'll probably want a dedicated sales agent, because it's just going to be narrowed in, very focused, and that thought chaining process is all to do with the agent and its goal. So if you make that thought chaining very focused on sales, it'll be a very good salesperson. So you end up splitting out. We do work with some small businesses outside of fitness that have come in for another entity we have. And we do deal with one agent can look after service and sales, but it's better in a organisation of the size of a leisure centre to have a dedicated agent for each job.
Okay, John, is that okay?
Yeah, both so.
Al, Lynn Wilson.
I'm going to have to buy it, aren't I?
Yeah, you are. And then tell us how it all works. Lynn Wilson's asked, any issues, barriers with integrating with current systems?
So we've done a few integrations, but not many yet. So our major integrations are like with the other side of the business, like the HubSpots and the Salesforces. But we've done other companies like TRP, for example, integrated with all the various different systems. So their APIs are good and they're fine. It's just the getting the what point do you want to do that integration? So, for example, like Abercroft's cancellation agent, the end of that flow is actually just to create a task for a human to go and update that record. You could spend the money and integrate that, so it will actually update the record within, you know, the member management system. So it all just comes down to cost of at what point do you want to invest in doing the integration piece.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Any more questions? Anything? Lynn, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, sorry. Do you see this at some point taking over our traditional member management systems as they are now?
It's an interesting one. I would say that the user interface becomes more redundant over time. You'll still have it, and I think it will phase itself out, but ultimately their database, I don't think it will take over. So it will just be the front end of that will probably have a lot more natural language interfaces to it. So either using our tech, or they might design and develop some of their own, like some of them are working on like insight reporting, where you can literally type a message and say, you know, what's my current live membership base, and it will reply that back. So you'll still need all the complexity of their infrastructure, if you like, and their database and their architecture, and it will just be how you interact with it will change.
Yeah. So do you see becoming a bit of a competitor for them in the future, or?
Well, for those that don't know, my wife used to be the chief exec of Gladstone. She's just she's now, I don't know what she titled it, portfolio manager or something now. So that would be several battles over the over a glass of wine over dinner, I think. But no, we don't see it being a competitor. It's more of an interface layer, and I think you'll find specialists, which hopefully, you know, but I believe we're actually the only one globally at the moment, specialists in AI technology, and then you'll keep the traditional specialists in software and database type technology.
Brilliant, thanks, Al. Okay, anything further? No. Right, what I shall do is download this recording, stick it on YouTube. I'll send it to everybody that's here and also on the contact list, and I will copy you in onto that message, so that if people want to get in contact, they can just reply to that email, and we can go that way. I think that has been really useful. It's certainly crystallized a few things in my mind, which is really powerful. If we're all happy, and we seem to be, Al, Justin, Tam, Julie, could you just stay on the call, because I just want to catch up about something for us rather than the whole of the LATCO team, if that's all right. So thank you so much for today. That has been really, really useful. Take care, everybody. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye.